So what would you like me to do here, Sharon?
Going back a few episodes to the Weald and Downland Museum, Denise painted a lovely sky, and she was talking about her windows of gloriousness, these little white areas that shone through the sky, through the clouds. But I noticed that she also had this fantastic technique of twisting the brush and giving the tips of the clouds this little upturned tilt. And that fascinated me, and I said at the time, you need to show us how you do that. And we thought that this might be a good time to have a tutorial like that, just a little shorty. Thought you might be interested, so come and join us.
Thank you. And I'm going to make you do it as well.
Oh gosh.
Right, small piece of paper here I'm using, as ever, it's the standard Bockingford, £140.
Okay.
I've taped it down, but it's not stretched, it's just held in place. I'm going to wet it with my nice big brush.
So you're using quite a lot of water there.
Yeah, I want to give myself time.
And that's what it's all about really, isn't it? Putting water on the paper.
Yeah.
It saves you from landing up with those really hard brush marks.
Yeah. And you can go for ages putting this water on.
Yeah. So that's a lot of water. That's running.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now that gives me time to mix. I'm only using 2 colours.
And they are?
Ultramarine, which is standard most people have, and I want to use a brighter blue. So I'm going to use a colour called peacock blue, but you could use cobalt, you could use phthalo, you could use Windsor blue, that sort of really intense blue. I think all manufacturers call
them different things, don't they? And the peacock blue is a Shinhan colour, isn't it?
It is. It's a beautiful one, and it's transparent. So.
Okay.
Got to see what I'm doing now. Okay, so I've mixed my colour. So I've got this mix. So it's a mixture of the ultramarine and this intense blue, and it just gives me this beautiful colour. But you can see that's not running. This is drying off, so I need to get cracking. So I'm going to negative paint my clouds. So I'm painting the shape around my clouds. And it's one of those one-hit kind of deep breath, go, you know, that you have to do. So we're going to... So we've got this sort of... I want more colour. Now the thing with painting wet in wet is because that water underneath is a layer of water, it's diluting the colour of what you've got. So you have to be quite bold with your paint. Now this uplift that you were talking about, I've wet my brush and then I've dried it off, so it's a damp brush. And all I'm doing here is I'm just taking this and just flicking it up. Now I do this sometimes because if my paper and my paint are a bit wet, the paint starts to slide down, and that's how I learned how to do it, because it's like, I'm not having you slide down, go away. And I was like, no, you can push back off again, and we end up with these little, like you say, they're uplifts. It's where the clouds have flicked around in the breeze.
So it's almost like mare's tails, isn't it?
Yes, yeah. And I keep dipping my brush in the water.
So you're keeping it clean.
Each time I'm drying it back so it's not too wet, because I don't want cauliflowers here.
And of course, if you were to put a quite wet brush into this kind of paint, because the blue is drying now, you would land up, wouldn't you, with cauliflowers. And cauliflowers are water or wet paint running into drying paint.
That's exactly it. Now I'm going to come in here with a little bit of grey, just to uplift there. And just leave that highlight at the top.
That's beautiful, isn't it?
There's a bit of moisture still down here, so I can still have a little play. And then it's a case of leave the blooming thing alone. Stop playing.
Because we're all monsters, aren't we? And we want to go back in and fiddle.
So if I, again, just run over how I came to doing this, because I quite like working on a slope, and particularly when we're out painting, we're often working on a vertical or a slope or demonstrating. I found that if I didn't judge my amount of water absolutely right, the sky slowly descended
Yes.
into where my clouds were.
Yes.
So
And
I
you
thought,
lose them.
yeah. So it was like, no, I'm going to push you back up there. And then I noticed that this happened. And actually, I think it's delightful.
I
You
think
get
it's
these
beautiful.
wisps
Yeah.
that happen. And so that by remembering how I came to do it, it should make you remember how to do
How
it.
to do it.
Yeah.
Fabulous. Oh, thank you, Denise. That's really, really a good little tutorial. Thank you.
Absolute pleasure. Only a few minutes, but it makes quite a drama, doesn't
Yeah.
it?
Thank you.
So, it's time for you to have a go.
No pressure.
Well, you paint skies and you paint absolutely beautiful skies. It's just it's only that little flick that you wanted to play with, wasn't it? So you know what to do.
Let's see.
You know what to do.
All right then. So the first thing we need to do is you soak the whole paper.
Yeah.
All right. So we're going to do that. Do you have any rules about always going vertically or horizontally, or
None
not bothered?
whatsoever in any direction.
Okey-dokey.
Now I'm making Sharon use my brush.
Yes. This is the magic that's going to make it decent, because it's a special brush. It's Denise's brush. Let's
I'll put a
give
link in the...
Denise magic.
Yes.
So I want plenty of water because you allowed that to run to a good degree. And it always interests me that it dries up more quickly around the
edge.
edges.
I suppose because there's a bit of paper underneath that edge that is
That's
dry,
that's
and it's
soaking it.
sucking it away. It's wicking it away, isn't it?
Okay, so would you say that's enough water? Are you
I
happy
would,
with that?
yes. So you need
Okay.
to mix your paint
So
up.
used French ultramarine
Yeah.
and peacock blue. Listen to me, we didn't at all.
We
You
did.
did.
We did.
And you said halfway through that you needed more colour, so I'm just going to make sure that I've got plenty. And then you chopped it in, didn't you?
Negative
Which was
painted it,
quite
yeah.
interesting. Because you see, my tendency would be to do
Okay.
that. But quite interesting the way you went through that.
See, what's happening here is exactly what caused me to develop
to-
this,
yeah.
is because the sky is running down. So paint a bit at the bottom so that you've got your bottom. Now the bottom I do tend to do more flat because it is flatter down there.
Like so.
Yes.
Right, so now we've got to deal with all this that's running. And
Yes.
you cleaned,
Yes.
and you dabbed,
Yeah.
and then you came in
And you pushed it back
and
out
you
the way.
pushed it back. Oh yeah, all right. I see exactly where you were coming from.
Yep. And it's just pushing that paint that's running down, because what you're doing two things. You're pushing the colour out of the way, but you're also removing some of the moisture so it's not going to keep running.
Can I use the tip of the brush? Does that
You
work?
can. Just be careful that you... I find it better not to. I tend to use the broadness
Alright.
of the brush, and the running down is what makes the little fairy wings.
Oh, that's really pretty, isn't it? You've got angels in here.
Yeah.
Right.
Now before
so,
it gets... You need to do a little bit of along the bottom, because you've got this kind of hillside going
Yeah.
down there. But actually, using this, you had this cloud, and then you could make a landscape at the bottom. It doesn't have to be sky.
That's a good point.
You
yes,
could make that entirely
put a
into-
dark landscape
Yeah,
down here
let it all
against the
dry.
light of the sky. Okay. So
I would take this up a bit higher, because that's kind of come down quite a long way.
So I need to be careful because I'm reaching the stage where my blue is
Yeah.
starting to dry up, and that means that I'm going to come in here and make a mess. if
And
I'm
you
not
can
careful.
tell, you can feel at the point at which you have to say
I'm getting
enough
there.
is enough. But this is exactly that. The amount of water you put down is exactly why I kind of created this, because I found that my sky was kind of
Yes,
down the page.
falling down the page. So then you put your dark in here. What did you use for that?
I
Do I
used to-
need to do any more to this bottom?
I wouldn't worry about it for now.
Okay.
Can you see the muck on the palette that's greyish?
Down here?
Yeah, I just put a bit of that in.
So you
And again, I
came-
just put it at the bottom and flicked it up.
came through here. Yes?
Yeah, and then just flicked it up.
Do you
So-
clean your brush
no,
first?
just dry your brush off and then just flick up here.
Do you go into it that way or this way?
I'd do that way. Just flick it up a little bit. And then a little bit up here. So it's as if those bits that are wisping are the bits that are catching the light,
Yeah.
and the rest of it's got a bit of shadow on it.
Well, That's quite exciting, isn't it?
Yeah. And then you could leave it as clouds. You could turn it into angels. You could turn it into fairies. You could turn it into a landscape. You could do whatever you wanted
Whatever you
to
want
with
to
it.
do. Now, is this wet enough, dry
Yeah,
enough?
you could probably
to
still lift a bit out. The bottom bit will stay dry longer. Wet longer.
Gravity.
Yeah.
And of course, if you're looking for distance in your skies, the further away you're going into the atmosphere, the smaller the clouds
Yes.
become, the thinner they become.
And that's just aerial perspective,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Yeah.
Look how beautiful this
That's
is
really
drying
good. I'm
out.
so chuffed with that. Thank you. That's a lovely technique. I think you'll all agree that that was a good tutorial just for that 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Chuffed to bits with it. Thank you very,
Absolute
very
pleasure.
much. Thank you. So funnily enough, Denise, you saying about you discovered this particular technique at a demo, I have to confess the very first demo I ever did, I had a fairy sitting down with her knees up and her arms around her knees, and I put in, I wanted just a flat blue sky. That was my intention, French ultramarine straight in. Never ever occurred to me as a novice, 30 years ago nearly, that the minute I put the water on the page, I knew I had to make it wet, it all ran down the page. And I can remember that moment of total and utter panic when I offered up the second brushful of paint and that all ran too, and I landed up with a white area between one run and the next.
Okay.
And I stood there and thought, oh, what am I going to do? And actually, I had to go with it. I had no choice with an audience of 50 people behind me.
Your heart's doing
And my
this.
heart was doing this and my hand was starting to shake.
Yes.
And I had to go with it and I left it, and I remember standing there looking at it and thinking, do you know something? That's not bad. And that's how the Weepy Sky arrived.
Fabulous. But I can't tell you how many techniques that I've developed. Because you've got an audience there, you can't do the fiddle that you would normally do and spoil it.
Yeah.
It's the freshness of this. I mean, look at how this has come together now.
Love that. I love it.
Fab.
I will take that home, and I really do feel a dragon coming on
Yep.
up here, kind of coming in sideways.
Yeah. Yep.
That's beautiful. Thank you very much. Really appreciate that. Thank you.
My pleasure.